I already made a review of Everything Everywhere All at Once, a very skeptical review. But if we truly support freedom of speech, we must accept that there can be multiple opinions on any subject, and sometimes several points of view can be valid at the same time. So I'd like to look at Everything Everywhere using a different angle and make a case that, in fact, this is the greatest film of the decade, or most probably even the greatest film of at least 3 decades. Let's compare it to some other Best Picture award winners. For example, we can start with Schindler's List from 1993, because both Schindler's List and Everything Everywhere All at Once won exactly 7 Oscars, which kind of implies that the quality of these films is identical or at least analogous, supposedly identical. But if we compare Everything Everywhere All at Once to Schindler's List, you can clearly see that, first of all, Everything Everywhere is much more fun to watch. Schindler's List is a very slow film. It doesn't have many jokes and doesn't feature a lot of hand to hand combat. It is also a black and white movie, well, mostly, which is a very debatable artistic choice. Everything Everywhere is much more saturated, much more vibrant, not only in terms of color, but also in terms of diversity. Schindler's List doesn't really promote inclusivity. It didn't age well in this department. All of the characters are white, and they are dealing with white people problems, which are very insignificant compared, say, to the problems that people encounter every day in Baltimore or in a laundromat. Yes, I know that there's a school of thought that not all of the characters in Schindler's List are in fact really white, like white. But that contradicts even some basic observations. I mean, their skin pigmentation is quite visibly pale. Now, Everything Everywhere All at Once is one of the few Best Picture winners that is actually centered around the acceptance of homosexuality. And it decisively shows that what people call tolerance is not enough. It was never enough. Homosexuality needs to be promoted. If you're merely tolerant, you're homophobic. And homophobia is not acceptable. Well, unless you're a Muslim. In that case, we must respect your religious beliefs. Needless to say that Schindler's List has nothing to do with this important subject. In fact, the vast majority of Best Picture winners from the last few decades don't really pay much attention, with the exception of probably films like Moonlight, which is probably the only real rival of Everything Everywhere for the title of the best movie of the 21st century so far. Because Moonlight manages to combine two of the most important subjects of our time: gay people and black people. But Everything Everywhere is more effective in sending the message. It is more watchable and it presents you really memorable imagery associated with LGBTQ plus movement. I know that the fact that the characters are shoving random objects into their asses can be seen as quite distasteful, but it must be understood that everything is done for a reason in a movie of such a caliber. Sticking objects into the rectum is a metaphor which underlines and enhances the theme of acceptance of gay culture. The main character is struggling to accept her daughter as a proud lesbian, and the universe shows her that unconventional sexual practices are, in fact, absolutely normal. Her daughter also shows up with dildos on the screen. It is also symbolism. It must be noted that putting the subject of homosexuality in the forefront of the movie is a very brave thing to do. Not many movies do it these days, especially in Hollywood. The directors are simply scared of the backlash in homophobic media or persecutions from the authorities of the Democratic Party, which currently controls the media narrative in the country. So, pushing these ideas of acceptance of gay people and diversity in the United States is practically the same in terms of bravery as, for example, a public declaration of the superiority of the communist ideology in the Soviet Union. You need some real balls to do this. This is the path of real nonconformists. Speaking of ideology, we must notice that since Everything Everywhere All at Once is a movie that is firmly dedicated to the cause, a movie that is firmly on the left of the political spectrum, it carefully tells us what people in the US really need to hear. You might remember that the film tells us that Evelyn, the main character, is an immigrant and the worst version of herself, and that if she stayed in China, she could be a huge movie star and realize her full potential. This is not an accident. This is a message on how the oppressive American system and the oppressive American society destroys hopes and dreams of people. While across the ocean, you have a much more advanced country that shows the effective alternative path. How do they manage to do this? Through diversity and left wing politics. Two things that enlightened filmmakers try to explain to their ungrateful audience. China is a very diverse country. About 99% of its population is Asian, and about 92% are Han Chinese. It is also an openly socialist country where the local version of the Democratic Party has full control over the politics. So, this combination of socialism and diversity obviously produces a society where every dream you have may come true, sometimes even all at once. This is a valuable lesson. You see, Everything Everywhere All at Once is so multifaceted that we actually can spend hours discussing all the details the movie presents and subjects it covers. I personally like how bravely it tackles another plague of the modern society, fat shaming. Because fat shaming is a serious problem, it is a thing. You'll remember this scene where Evelyn tells her daughter that she should eat more healthy, which is outrageous and extremely toxic. Nobody should eat healthy. How can a human resist deep fried chicken or a beverage which is 50% sugar? It's impossible, and people shouldn't be ashamed of that. And how can you judge which type of food is good and which is not? It's all relative. One man's garbage is another man's feast. Sorry, one person's garbage is another person's feast. Also, some countries just don't need so many people, especially people with high life expectancy. And obesity leads to heart diseases. So, dying of a heart attack when you're young is simply a responsible thing to do, right? You don't put too much strain on the social system. Your pensions and savings, if you have any, can be diverted to people who need it more than you. There's also another subtle symbolism to all of this, which sometimes the filmmakers help to reinforce by dressing up a chubby actress in elaborate costumes which make her look even chubbier than she really is, and obviously explores alternative definitions of the concept of beauty. In fact, all of this is quite probably referencing ancient Greek philosophy and Parmenides in particular. Parmenides and other philosophers maintained that the sphere is a perfect shape. People who look more like a sphere are more advanced and more beautiful than skinny people. Also, there are some practical implications. It is much easier to roll down the street if you're an ergonomic human cannonball. Lots of symbolism, as I said. We can do this for a long time, but I don't want to bore you, so let's pull the butt plug and go straight to the conclusion. Some people hide a lack of intellect behind elaborate words and ornate speech. But Everything Everywhere is a film that uses metaphors but tries to be on point and speak directly to people's hearts and minds. And that's what is truly great about this movie. The philosophy of the film is not trying to confuse you with unnecessary pseudo intellectual constructs. All simple truths are simple, and the film successfully delivers them to its simple audience.